Izuku Midoriya was born, and he seemed odd. Izuku had two different color eyes when his mother was holding him, and he was acting strange. The boy was acting odd, as if he was craving something that he didn't have. The boy was, in a way, deemed to be an addict for some reason, as if the mother was doing drugs before, having birth. Tests were ran, and all the signs of body language told them that he could have been, some sort of drug baby. But he wasn't. There was no drugs in his system at all. Nothing in his bloodstream. But there was something odd. His blood was very abnormal. It would move in such a way that seemed more controlled than what the human body would know how to use. Doctors didn't have an explanation for this, and maybe just chalked it up to, maybe his quirk was coming out a lot quicker than any normal child. And the mother, Inko Midoriya, began to think that as well. But the red eye definitely was unexplainable. It wasn't changing color. It was odd. It was like an anomaly. What was wrong with this child? At the age of 4, though, Izuku's quirk would finally show. The once happy-go-lucky kid that he was from, when he was born to, the age of 4, was really no more. He was acting strange. And one night, he had a terrible dream. And his mother came in, and there was blood everywhere. The blood began to spike and move around the room, and it seemed to be coming from Izuku. Izuku stands up and stares at his mother, and the red eye that was once there is bloodshot. No, not just bloodshot. The blood vessels were bursted to the fact that his whole eye was blood red. And Izuku stared at his mother, and his mother's skin began to boil. She began to scream, and Izuku woke up, and when he did, his mother was laying there, unconscious on the ground. He didn't know what happened and ran over to her. He began asking what's wrong, and she didn't answer. He called 911 and basically told them that his mother was on the ground and she was unconscious. And when she came to, when the ambulance arrived, she began screaming that he is the devil child. He's evil. Everybody was confused by this, thinking that maybe the mother went insane. And Izuku was terrified and ran off. People, went on a search for him, and flyers went out, but nobody could find him. His mother didn't even look for him. The event that had happened scared her so bad that she couldn't even look at another child. She couldn't even think about her own child. Whatever happened to Izuku that night, she didn't want to be a part of it anymore. Izuku began wondering what even happened. How is it his fault? But he just knew that somehow it was. So he grew up on the streets. For at least a year. Until, he was on a rooftop, sitting there, contemplating what he would even do with his life. And was thinking about even taking it. A young child without his mother. A young child with no home to go to. What was he going to do? Out of nowhere, someone grabs him, picks him up before he can actually jump, and carries him away. A man with, a red scarf, seemingly, with a bandaged body, and with a mask over his face, takes Izuku away, putting him down in a nearby forest right by a cabin. Why the hell were you gonna jump off that roof, kid? What? I have nothing to live for, mister. Who are you anyways? The man shakes his head and introduces himself as the hero killer, Stain. Izuku knows who this is. He's been a fan of heroes, well, his entire life, as short as it's been so far. But he wasn't afraid of Stain. Stain didn't show any intent to kill the child, and for some reason Izuku can feel it in his bones, in his body, in his mind. It was odd. It was as if the blood pressure of somebody could tell him the intent of what they were going to do. But Stain's was so calm, comforting. This mass killer, somebody that went out and more or less eliminated heroes, was so calm inside. He wasn't freaking out toward Izuku and was relaxed. Izuku introduces himself. He says that his name is Izuku Midoriya, but Midoriya is the last name of the mother that abandoned him. Stain puts his hand on his face and says that, well, sometimes freaks like us need to stick together. He brings Izuku inside his little cabin and says that he has an extra room. He planned to get an apprentice one of these days when he was unable to do the duty of, well, saving this society, but I guess this will do as well. Izuku enters the room and it's pretty beaten and battered, but it's not like he can complain. He's been sleeping on the streets and in sewers, so he doesn't, not one bit. And Stain tells him that he's just a kid, and that a kid needs to learn, well, how to defend himself first before he can do anything. Izuku is surprised by this and asks if Stain will train him. Stain nods and says that he has an agenda, but on his off time he will train him. So Izuku slowly but surely grows up, getting his training from Stain at the age of about 8. And it was simple things, basically how to use a blade, martial arts, and other various things. Stain realized that the boy has, well, insane potential. Far more than even Stain himself. The quirk that he possesses is unimaginable, and he doesn't even really know how to control it yet. Stain can't even imagine what damage he could do when he can control it. So Stain starts training him. He trains him in how to use his quirk all the way up until he's about 12 years old, and he learns pretty well. He begins learning the ins and outs of his quirk, the one that he never had analyzed by a doctor. And he began learning why his body was, well, like addicted to blood in a way. His body doesn't need blood, at least not intaking it, but he needs to use the properties of other people's blood to keep himself sane, or he'll boil his own blood. And that's what's been happening. And the lash out that he had against his mother fulfilled his quest for years. He boiled his mother practically inside out, basically tiding him over until now. But not being able to control his own quirk and use it on others, or slowly use it on himself, hurts him, makes his body, well, worse. There's drawbacks to this that he had to learn on his own, and during the training he even found this out. Stain even sacrificed, well, a day or two of himself so that the boy could, well, in a way, feed. Izuku slightly used his quirk on Stain, which put him out of commission for a little while. Not out cold by any means. He could do things around his cabin, but he wasn't able to go out at full strength. Izuku profusely apologized about it, but Stain says that now they know. Now they know that this is proof that Izuku is ready to go out. They don't know the extent to his quirk, but they do know the drawback. And they don't know how strong it can actually get. So, at the age of 13, Izuku goes on his first, well, escapade with Stain. Basically having an outfit similar to his, but more or less just a mask and some, well, basic clothing. he heads out and they begin hunting down, well, some heroes. Some that aren't really known by, well, the public very much, but to Stain, he knows that they are corrupt, pieces of trash. So they hunt them down. So when they approach the alleyway with one of them there, Stain drops down in front of him, and Izuku drops down as well. The man that's a hero that's standing in front of them begins mocking both of them, saying that he didn't know Stain, the hero killer, needed backup. And well, he has backup as well. As he says this, two other heroes appear, and Stain's smirk widens even more, because well, those are two more targets that he needed to deal with anyways. So Izuku quickly looks at them and his eye begins to go red. He sticks out his hand and it's as if the three people in front of him begin to lose control. One of them slams into the wall and basically crumbles to the ground, screaming in pain as if some ghost was attacking him. The other two were forced to fight each other, and they beat each other down until, well, they were practically just lifeless bodies. Stain smiles and slightly laughs. Now you are something else, kid. How are you feeling? Izuku turns to him and nods and says that he feels great. He feels stronger. Well, kid, that's good. Last thing we need is another little outburst, and I'll have to take another 2-day rest. Izuku bows and says that he'll make sure that doesn't happen again, and Stain pats him on the back. Don't worry, I know it won't. Stain walks over to the three bodies and finishes them off, tying them up and pinning them to a light. Alright, let's take our leave. Stain and Izuku leave like they were never there. This wasn't a matter of minutes, a matter of maybe a minute and a half. Izuku's strength is immeasurable at this point. But after a while, this feeling of strength began to fade away a little bit, and Izuku even told Stain this. He explained to Stain that it seems that his quirk works in an odd way. He basically used it on those people and he felt a rush. It was as if it was adrenaline, but it was more than that. It was enhanced. It made him stronger, it made his quirk stronger, and it made all his abilities stronger. But that's only temporary. Stain nods. I see. So your quirk works kind of like your body would. In a way, it's like adrenaline, like you were saying. But it's different. That's so interesting. It seems you can control your own adrenaline. You can spike it. But, of course, adrenaline does come down. It's kind of like the high of a drug, in a way. Izuku hears this and has a flashback to when he was just a small baby, remembering exactly what was told to him, or, well, spoke about him. Something about being a drug child, something about being addicted. Well, he was addicted. In a way, he was feeding off his mother's blood. He was some vampire. Well, without drinking it. He actually doesn't drink blood or anything, but that's what he feels like. He feels like some vampire. Stain then tells him that he can sit this one out and that he's gonna go handle a couple more things. So Izuku is actually left alone for a couple days, and this wasn't the best idea. Unfortunately, Stain didn't know that there were heroes, well, a whole agency, ready to come and attack his cabin. They were spotted on the way back. Someone spotted a child, well, Izuku, someone with green hair, entering the forest with Stain, maybe thinking he was in trouble. So, some agency was put on the case. Actually, one that was pretty well known, the Wild Pussycats. Not the strongest in terms of individual hero power, but definitely a force to be reckoned with. So they walk into the forest to find the cabin. Izuku immediately hears them and begins wondering what they expect to do here. Izuku walks out and greets them. What do you need? One of them steps up, Tiger. We're looking for the hero killer Stain, and it seems like you're here with him. Are you his son or something? Son? Definitely not. But he is my sensei. Well, kid, you're making a mistake. You need to come with us as soon as possible. And if I tell you no, what will happen? Then we'll take you by force. This is for the good of you. Do you not see that? The good of me? Where were you when my mother abandoned me? Where were you when I was homeless for a year? Not anywhere to be found, correct? The other Wild Pussycats begin apologizing, saying that they wish they could have been there, but they didn't know. Exactly, you didn't know. It's your job to know. It's your job to protect people, correct? There is a lot of heroes out there. A lot. So it's not just your fault. But how did what you call a villain know that I was in trouble? How did he come across me, one of him, and thousands of you? How did that happen? Izuku begins getting more and more mad. The police officers behind the Wild Pussycats begin to scream and collapse. How? Do you want to answer me? Or should I start melting you? They're all shocked and Tiger charges in, but when he jumps, he's frozen midair. Wrong answer, Tiger. Don't play games with me. Tiger stops midair and gets slammed to the ground, but gets back up immediately and turns to the other members of the Wild Pussycats. Tiger struggles to talk. Run! I can't control myself! Tiger charges in at them and begins beating down the other members as they're forced to retreat. Izuku controls them all and throws them out of the forest, but that's where he tests his limits. The range of his Blood Quirk is not as far as the outskirts of the forest, and unfortunately they get away. Stain is actually in a nearby tree. He saw everything. He actually was just getting back and was gonna come to help, but he jumps next to Izuku. Now that's impressive, kid. We need to leave. I have another place, don't worry. Yup, whatever you say. Izuku and Stain leave once again, but this time they're on high alert. The day after they leave, actually tons of more heroes arrive at the scene, and Izuku Midoriya is not deemed as missing anymore, but as a threat, as a villain. Izuku even sees this on the news. He's walking through the city with a hoodie on, gathering food for both him and Stain, and he scoffs at this. Yeah, villain. Sure. Who cares? He walks through this place, a dark alley, and begins hearing a girl screaming for her life, and he walks over slowly to see two guys grabbing her and trying to force themselves onto her, and she begins crying. Quickly, he basically makes them both stop and pins them both to the wall. Now what do you two think you're doing? They look at him as his hood drops from his head, and their eyes grow wide. You're that kid. You're that Izuku kid. They're terrified. He's made a name for himself, someone that can take out the Wild Pussycats single-handedly without even seemingly raising a finger is a threat. Something that people would know very quickly and be terrified of. They both try to run away, but Izuku swiftly kills them. He walks over to the girl and looks at her. Why aren't you afraid? She smiles and says that she's not afraid because she knows who he is. She says that she, well, loves Mr. Staney, and that also means that she loves him. Someone that can control blood. Someone that loves blood like her. She smiles and says that if she can, and asks if she can cut him. And Izuku's confused. You can't cut me. I actually haven't seen myself bleed in a long time. I don't even think blood pours out of me at this point. So, here, I'll even do you a favor. Izuku takes the knife from, well, in her pocket and cuts himself. And no blood even spills out. See? But I can control that as well. Out of nowhere, blood begins to pour out at an extreme rate, and she is gawking at it. She's confused, but also stunned by what he just did. Immediately, the blood then joins back with his body. Like you said, I can control blood. I guess that's a simple way of putting it. I think you would be an interesting, well, help for Mr. Stain. Or what do you call him? Mr. Staney? You should come with me. She begins to get excited and jump for joy. But as she does that, Izuku knocks her out and takes her away. Yeah, I don't trust her big mouth to, well, keep this secret. He takes her all the way to Stain's hideout. Well, I guess both of their hideouts. And throws her on the ground. Izuku then explains to Stain what he saw and who she is, and that she may be able to help them out. Stain looks at him weirdly, but then nods. Alright, kid, I trust your judgment, but don't and do not mess this up. Izuku then changes the path of her bloodstream and rushes it to her brain, and she wakes up instantly. Don't move so fast. You'll faint again if you stand up quick. Izuku helps her up slowly and points at Stain. That's who you're looking for, correct? Mr. Staney? Izuku slightly mocks her, and she gets mad about it. Mr. Staney? What the hell? Is that what she calls me? You should have left her in the alleyway. Izuku starts laughing, and, well, the girl, Himiko Toga, introduces herself. And then says that leaving a young lady in an alleyway all by herself is not very, well, gentlemanlike. Izuku rolls his eyes, and Stain says that he already regrets this, and they both walk in. She tags along and skips into the cabin. Izuku, Toga, and Stain continue training. Well, more, at least Toga and Izuku. They continue training over the next couple years. Izuku has some, well, goals for himself to accomplish. He wants to do more than what they're just doing currently. He wants to, well, help Stain, yes, of course, but the ideals go deeper for him. He doesn't just want to get rid of these so-called heroes. He wants to instill something in the future generation. He wants to instill, well, in a way, fear. Fear that if you don't become a proper hero, that there'll be someone like him lurking in the shadows to kill him. This may seem outlandish at the moment, but Izuku, this is his goal. And Stain knows that as well, thinking that this kid is going beyond just Stain's goals. And, well, Toga is just there because she wants to do whatever she wants, I guess. And Izuku obviously felt some pity toward her, especially with how she was being treated. But obviously Izuku has his own agenda. He cares about his comrades, of course, but he still needs to get things done. So, time passes, and, well, the UA entrance exam comes up. Izuku knows about this, and, well, 3 days beforehand, he got everything into place, including fake IDs and other things like that. He dyes his hair a certain color, far from what his normal color is, changes his name, and, well, changes his whole style. He more or less puts contacts in to change his eye color as well, and he uses something that he found out about his quirk. He decides to use only this one thing so that he can get away with it as a strength enhancement quirk. He can actually flare his blood, make it, well, amplify in a way, and it gives him this rush. And, well, we talked about it before. It's as if it makes him stronger. But this is making his own blood, in a way, boil, making his adrenaline skyrocket, and actually helping his strength increase 2 to 3 times more than the average human being. It's nothing insane, but he also can still get away with some of his other blood quirk antics, because it's not like anybody would really know. So he goes to the entrance exam under the alias of Goro Hizashi, and he goes about passing the entrance practical exam and the entrance written exam. He tries his best to hide his quirk and not overdo anything. So he just makes sure that he just can get enough points to pass, and he keeps his suspicions at an all-time low, not really communicating with many other people, making it seem as if he's, well, more or less to himself, like an introvert. So he then arrives at UA after getting the letter that he passed the exam at a random address he put. He just waited for a while and swooped the letter right when it arrived. So he went to UA, arrived, and he met his class 1A, and someone was there that he, well, knew, very familiar, and his name was Katsuki Bakugo. But luckily, with his dyed hair, changed, well, eye color, and various other different styles of clothing, he would never realize that it was Izuku. He began learning from their sensei by the name of Shota Aizawa, other known as Eraserhead, but Izuku even deemed this person as, well, a good hero, just like how All Might is a good hero. But Izuku knew the job, knew what he had to do, and he actually had suspicion of someone else in the class. Izuku can read intent. Everyone's blood moves differently. It boils differently in his mind. He can tell when someone's nervous, when someone's quaking, when someone's proud, when someone has an ego. He looks over, sees Bakugo, and can tell that he's very proud of himself, to the point that he's egotistical, maybe even too high on himself. He looks to a girl by the name of Ochako Uraraka, who seems shy and timid and afraid of failure. He's not sure what else, but he also sees, well, someone else. Someone by the name of Aoyama, that his blood boiled in a certain way, in a way that he was not only nervous, but terrified. But of what? Izuku didn't want to make assumptions, but it did not seem that he was terrified of their teacher, terrified of UA. He was terrified of something else. Terrified is not the word when you go into school, when you're afraid, when you're scared of failure. This is different. This is as if this boy, Aoyama, has a gun to his head and is being pressured into doing something. So Izuku decides to keep his eye on him. They do a quirk assessment test in which Izuku obviously does pretty decent and doesn't make sure not to, well, express anything extra. And, well, this suspicion of his occurs not the next day, but the day after. They do hero training, leading to, well, their appearance in the USJ. Izuku begins to get even more suspicious when he can feel the tension in, well, Ayama's blood. He can feel that something is about to come. He taps his phone, even pulling it out, typing to somebody, some anonymous number that he knows is Stain, telling Stain that an attack is about to occur, that he just wants to let him know so he might have to deal with it the way he sees fit. Stain asks where he's going to be, and he says that he's going to be, well, more or less in UA, or at, well, they know as the USJ, which is property of UA. Stain says to contact him once again if he needs extraction or help as soon as possible, but Izuku says that he should be fine, but he'll keep it in mind. So they enter the USJ, and Izuku can feel hundreds, if not at least 200 people, the presence of them, and he begins to question himself. Now, why are they here? And who are they? They come out of a giant portal. Hundreds of villains emerge, and Aizawa tells Pro Hero 13, the person that runs the USJ more or less and helps with rescue training, to protect the students. Aizawa jumps off as he can feel Ayama's blood continuously boiling, being even more scared now that the villains have arrived. Now, why would you be afraid if you were a traitor? Interesting. Izuku begins to think this and begins to, well, help anybody he can. He doesn't want to blow his cover, but he also wants to speak with Aoyama. He finally gets Aoyama alone, and while they're fighting, he finishes up and asks him a question. So why are you so afraid, Aoyama? He is confused. Aoyama says that why wouldn't he be afraid? These villains, and Izuku cuts him off. I can feel it. You knew this was gonna occur, didn't you? Aoyama is shocked by this. How was his cover blown so soon? This makes no sense. How does Izuku pins him against the wall without even touching him? And Aoyama is confused by this. He's freaking out now. He doesn't know how this person until he looks into his eyes and Izuku takes off his contacts. You know of me, correct? Now, I am no hero, but in my opinion, I'm no villain. Would you like to speak now on why these villains are here and how you knew? Aoyama begins to explain in a panic, knowing who this person is, knowing that he's more or less to, well, the public known as a cold-blooded killer. A teen their age, willing to do the dirty work, willing to end someone's life without a second thought. And Aoyama begins to spill that he is an informant for All For One. That he, well, gave them this information so that they could kill All Might. Izuku looks down and lets go of Aoyama. You're lucky I don't kill you right here. You're redeemable. But you better tell the heroes what you did. If you don't, you'll be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. Izuku leaves him where he is, and multiple other villains try to, well, grab Izuku, but quickly Izuku freezes them in place and collapses them, and they begin to foam at the mouth, and they instantly die. Izuku walks out to see Aizawa fighting tons of villains, and quickly he more or less drops all the villains to the ground. He takes off his shirt and begins walking toward Aizawa. Aizawa looks at him and realizes those eyes and knows exactly who it is. He cancels Izuku's quirk, and all the villains begin to breathe a sigh of relief, but are more or less out of commission. I'm not your enemy, Aizawa. Or Eraserhead. Actually, quite the opposite currently. But you could keep that quirk on me, or you can point it at them, and I can help you defeat these, well, villains. How should I believe you? You have no reason to, really, but I can tell you that I'm not the one that exposed the information of you being at the USJ. Actually, that was one of your other students, believe it or not. Aizawa is shocked by this and tries not to believe it, but Izuku just shrugs his shoulders. You don't need to believe me. Arrest me after we're done here. I don't really care. Aizawa smirks and says that it's time for them to fight then. Izuku nods, and well, the Nomu comes charging in after them. Izuku puts his hand out and it stops the Nomu in his tracks, but he continues to barrel forward. Aizawa says that killing is not an option here. Do not kill. Izuku looks at him. This thing, It's not even alive in the first place, Aizawa. Izuku begins to slam it into the ground using his quirk, but can feel tons of resistance. This Nomu is strong. It has multiple quirks, strength enhancing, and various other things, and he can tell that this is going to be the hardest fight of his life. And that's not it. Someone is also there by the name of Tomura Shigaraki.
Damn, this was easy. I can't believe you came to us. I was looking for you. You're Izuku, the crazy guy, right? The one that can bend blood? Something like that. Sounds like something straight out of a cartoon, in my opinion.
Izuku looks at him as he continues to control the Nomu. You definitely should not be looking for me. I'm not the person you want to associate with. Izuku continues to hold the Nomu as, well, Aizawa begins to try to find a weak spot, but there is none. Izuku sighs and decides to take matters into his own hands and begins to turn his hand. Aizawa asks what he's going to do, and Izuku says that he's going to make this Nomu an undead doll. So, Izuku begins pumping all the blood to the Nomu's brain, making the Nomu think that Shigaraki is speaking to him. Izuku speaks and says to attack the man right there as he points. The Nomu charges at Shigaraki and punches him into the wall, grabbing the body of Kurogiri as well and slamming it to the ground. Izuku can feel the quirk slipping and decides to make this quick. He crushes his hand and the blood all in the Nomu begins to burst out, leaking more and more, and as it leaks, it begins to cover the Nomu, and it begins to harden, and well, the Nomu is stuck in place, unable to move, and well, frankly, unable to function. Aizawa is shocked by this, looking at them. The Nomu isn't even dead. Well, Izuku knew that the Nomu was already dead, but he still is surprised. Aizawa is surprised that Izuku took, well, caution on this. He looks at, well, who he thinks is Goro Hizashi and begins questioning why he would, well, choose this path instead. Why not become a hero? Because it looks like he has the restraint to do so. Eraserhead, you're interesting, but that's not my goal in life. My goal isn't to protect everybody, it's to correct everybody. And that's what I'm going to do. And well, Stain is a good example of this, eliminating heroes that don't belong, correcting society at the way it's supposed to be. You may not believe in my ideals, but I do believe in yours as a true hero. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm not here to be one. Hope you realize that, Eraserhead. Aizawa nods, and well, as they continue talking, the other villains escape as the other heroes arrive. Shigaraki and Kurogiri escape with, well, the Nomu that is practically unusable now, but Izuku then looks to Aizawa and says a promise is a promise. He puts his hand out, basically waiting to get cuffed, and a bunch of heroes come down to cuff him. Well, that's until a rope then falls from the sky, and Izuku grabs it and stuns them all, making them all freeze in place. Sorry about that, but I can't exactly let myself go to jail quite yet. Plus, how the hell are you gonna keep me in jail? Izuku gets pulled up very, very quickly by a rope, and they're out of there. Stain, Toga, and Izuku are gone as fast as they arrived. Stain tells him to not be so reckless next time. Come on, I knew you would come, and you did. Yeah, and what if I was busy, and I didn't? Okay, I won't be so reckless next time. I apologize. Toga kinda laughs, saying that it's like he's his father, and Stain denies this, saying that he's his sensei. No, he's kinda like my dad. It's not like I ever knew my dad, and my mom's kind of, well, horrible as well, but that's beyond the point. Toga begins to say how cute that is, but then Stain tells them to both stop, that they still have a mission to, well, attend to. Stain says that he needs to deal with deal with some hero in a nearby city. And they should be spotted there in the next couple days. So to be ready when they are, well, gonna go over there. Some time passes and Izuku, Toga, and Stain head over, and they tell Toga to just watch and not do anything stupid. Her quirk is useful, but not for, well, things like this. And she begins complaining, saying that she's also dynamic in fighting as well, but Izuku and Stain just deny this, saying that she could be a target of a weak spot if it came down to it. She gets kind of mad about this and says fine, that she'll train even harder so that they will never think that ever again about her. They both roll their eyes and then jump down toward the hero that they want to eliminate, in which they do, in very quick fashion. But the thing is, someone is lurking around the corner. Ingenium, well, the pro hero, one of the most famous in the world. And he comes out of nowhere to fight the hero killer and Izuku. Stain is about to attack him, but Izuku says that he is a real hero, and Stain says that he knows this, but he cannot take this man lightly, so if need be, he will kill him as well. Izuku shakes his head and stops Ingenium in his place. You don't do what you're about to do. It's not a good idea. I'll give you a chance to leave, a chance to go, but I don't want to have to hurt you. Ingenium breaks free of Izuku's quirk and takes his stance and charges in once again. Izuku shakes his head as his arm begins to bubble and swell up a little bit, and he lands a solid punch on Ingenium's mask, slamming him to the ground. It's time for you to go to sleep. Izuku bends his blood and makes him, well, go unconscious. Izuku throws him out of the alleyway so that other heroes can see him, and they both take their leave.
You know, kid, you seem more merciful now. It's like those heroes are rubbing off on you.
Yeah, whatever. Merciful, whatever. It's not the case. Don't think that I'm trying to be some hero.
It's actually a compliment, kid. I think there needs to be mercy in this world as well. You know the difference between being merciful and needing to kill. That's good. And honestly, I need to learn that a little bit more myself. So I should take some notes from you sometimes.
Izuku kind of smirks and says that sometimes, the student does become the teacher. Stain shakes his head and says to not get ahead of himself. Izuku smiles and they all head back to, the cabin or their hideout and wait for their next mission. But during this waiting time, what they didn't know is that when they execute their mission, someone will be waiting, and their attack will be at the same time as, the League of Villains. An attack by the League of Villains on Hosu City, and an attack on the group of Izuku, Toga, and Stain on hero targets that they need to eliminate. How will this end up being? Well, you'll have to find out next time. Izuku, Toga, and Stain, now back at their hideouts, wait for the moment to strike. Stain says that they're basically hunting down one person, a hero by the name of Native. Native is someone that, isn't fit to be a hero. There's a couple more around there as well in Hosu City that he needs to deal with. So that's exactly what they'll be doing. So Stain, Toga, and Izuku head off. Again, Toga is sidelined for the majority of this, but they continue on and they begin to gain ground, eventually finding the pro hero Native, in which they swiftly kill him. And it's nothing really unreasonable. Native didn't stand a chance in the first place, and Ida would not be in the scenario at all. Of course, Izuku knows his rights from wrongs, and he showed mercy to his brother a long time ago, or whatever you want to call mercy. But that's beyond the point. What really matters is what is going to happen next. What is going to happen in Hosu City as the three of them are currently there? Nomus begin to invade. Nomus begin to attack all the pros, students, and everybody alike, citizens, and well, this isn't good. Stain realizes what this is. He realizes that it's the League of Villains. The League of Villains want to, well, recruit him. He hasn't said anything to Izuku and hasn't said anything to Toga because, well, he doesn't feel that it needs to be said. But that's why they're here. Izuku is then attacked and punched across the street by a Nomu, and he puts his hand out towards Stain and Toga, telling them to leave and that he can handle the Nomu on his own. And he begins wondering, are they after Stain or are they after him? Stain was under the assumption that they're after himself, obviously, because he's had a conversation with them. But that could be not the case. And well, Izuku begins fighting this Nomu, and he begins dominating him. Obviously, this Nomu is nowhere near the strength of the one that they fought before, and he begins controlling it using his Blood Quirk until he turns to the side and sees someone else fighting Stain and Toga. This isn't good. There was a hero nearby, someone very strong. Actually, him and his son. Izuku knows him pretty well. Shoto Todoroki is currently with Endeavor. Even Shoto looks at Izuku and is shocked to see him there. Izuku then controls Endeavor's blood, but has to let go of the Nomu. Endeavor is a different beast. Endeavor is someone that has a mind of its own, but also has these flames burning within him. Strength of a pro hero. Not just a pro hero, but a top one, top 3 as is, and Endeavor isn't going to go down that easily. So Izuku begins controlling him, trying to get him to get off Stain and Toga so that they can leave. Eventually, they are able to escape. Even Stain knows his limitations, and not having the drop on someone like Endeavor would lead to their demise very quickly. Izuku lets go, and Endeavor sees, well, Izuku standing there. Endeavor says that isn't that one of their classmates, and Shoto doesn't know what to say. They weren't friends by any means, but Izuku was never a bad person while they were training, while they were learning together. Izuku wasn't even really a villain. He even protected the other students and helped everyone out. He even made sure Aizawa didn't die during the sequence of the Nomu attacking. So, what is he exactly? Shoto just nods, saying that he is one of the students, and this causes Endeavor to hesitate. So Endeavor doesn't attack Izuku, so he's able to make a swift escape through the alleyway, and Shoto doesn't even know what to say. Endeavor questions him, saying that didn't that kid betray them? And Todoroki, or Shoto, shakes his head and says that that wasn't really the case. That's what everyone wants you to think. But this person, he's more a vigilante than anything. And he hid amongst us and even protected us when that attack on the USJ happened. Endeavor scoffs at this and says that he is still a villain, but Shoto says that he disagrees. Just because some homeless man steals a candy bar from a store doesn't make them a villain. Breaking the law doesn't necessarily make you one. Endeavor looks at him in confusion, but then realizes what his son is saying. Endeavor decides not to chase, and they both end up leaving and defeating the rest of the Nomus that are there. Izuku, during this escape, tries to meet up with Stain and Toga, but as he thought. 2 Nomus then step out of the shadows with a couple more people. Tomura Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and while they stand firm and ready to capture Izuku, even himself, he's weakened by this point. Holding Endeavor still is not an easy thing to do, and he may put up a good fight, but that fight is ended very quickly with a Nomu smashing his head into the ground. Izuku is out cold, unconscious, and brought into, well, the League of Villains' lair. They wake him up by splashing water on his face, and he looks at Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and another member that he's never seen by the name of Dabi. Izuku looks at the 3 of them and questions what they want.
It's pretty simple, kid. Very actually simple. We want you to join us. This whole little ragtag with you and here the hero killer is very interesting, but your quirk could be way more suited for me, for us, for all for one, my master.
I think I'm gonna have to pass. I appreciate the invite though. Dobby stands next to him and ignites his flames and says that really wasn't an invitation. He doesn't necessarily have a choice here. It's either join or die. And Shigaraki says that that's actually not the case. There's 3 options. Join, die, or become a slave. Izuku doesn't know what he's talking about, and he points to Kurogiri. Izuku shakes his head. If you think I'm that weak-minded to become a slave, you have another thing coming.
Oh, trust me, kid. Weak-minded doesn't even matter. You'll end up falling for it, and you'll be living in a shadow realm forever.
Izuku looks at Kurogiri and his eyes widen. So they then punch Izuku in the face, knocking him out cold. Or, well, that's at least what they think. He's dragged away and the doctors and scientists begin working on him. But through his last bit of consciousness, Izuku implants something within the doctor's minds via the bloodstream. He basically gives himself a way out. He will be under the control for a little bit, but hopefully something will snap him out of it. Something will help him. So he implants something in their minds, something that would be a failsafe that once he hears it, he'll snap back to reality, and whatever they did to him will be reversed. Not only reversed though, anything that they do to him in terms of quirks, in which he overheard them talking about, he'll retain. His body may give out in 3 to 5 years, but at least he'll retain it enough to do what he needs to do. So Izuku and his mind begins to fade, and he disappears from existence. He's no longer Izuku anymore. They put a mask on him and they dye his hair, and they basically shovel him out.
Perfect. Now he's ready. Now this is something. All Might maybe couldn't have been defeated when we wanted him to, but this will definitely secure us the win. The final boss isn't even to come, and we already have the ultimate warrior. Our own blood warrior. It's honestly a cute name. He's just a kid, matter of fact.
Shigaraki begins to laugh, and Izuku takes one knee and bows to him. How may I be at your service?
Oh, nothing quite yet, but you'll be useful very soon.
Izuku, now a slave to the whims of Shigaraki and all for one. What's gonna happen to him? What's even going on back with Toga and Stain? Well, let's get to that. Toga and Stain are currently trying to find a way to find him. They don't know where he is at all. He knows that there's a good chance he was captured by the League of Villains. The thought process crossed his mind, but he didn't think he'd be captured that easily. They must have had serious firepower to do it. And what they don't realize is that is the truth. And what they don't realize is what is going to unfold in the coming days. Stain is worried. This is like his son. And Toga is as well, the one person that actually saved her from getting brutalized in an alleyway by 2 people that she didn't even know, just because of her quirk. Stain tells her not to worry, that Izuku has, well, a hard head, and that he'd die before flipping sides. But that worry did spike once again when they hear on the TV of a man with a mask and, well, blood trails beside him. He goes around killing those who step to him, killing every hero he sees. But it's like he doesn't even touch them. It's like he melts them from the bottom to the top, from the head to the toe. Stain is worried. But this person with a mask and this person with this blood-like boiling quirk isn't the same. He kills, disappears in an instant as if he has some teleportation quirk, and works his way around every single city, exterminating heroes. And just as more heroes come to combat him, he waves his goodbye and is gone. All he's doing is being a distraction to lure out somebody, lure out All Might himself, so that they can finish him off. So, that's what happens. After a kidnapping at a forest of UA students, Katsuki Bakugo was kidnapped, and All Might and various other pro heroes invade the villain base. But Izuku is waiting in the rafters as they do. He then grabs All Might with his quirk and begins shoveling him outside. You know, Symbol of Peace, this is very interesting. I never thought I would get a chance to fight you. He looks at him, dead in the eyes, and All Might realizes that this is the same kid that was at the USJ. The same kid that was in their school. This isn't him though, he feels the way he talks, the way it feels. Even every vibration in his voice feels different. It seems like it's all encoded in his brain. Well, All Might then tries to conversate with him, saying his made-up name that they knew at UA, but Izuku doesn't respond, saying that name does not exist. He has no clue who that is. He only knows one thing and one mission. What is that? To kill you, All Might. Izuku begins his assault on All Might. His teleportation quirk and blood quirk is one hell of a combo. He boils his own blood to the point where he can almost match up with All Might's strength, or at least when All Might is about 50%. But All Might turns it up and punches Izuku in the face, sending him flying at a building. But guess who's there to catch him? All for One. He sits Izuku on the ground and smiles behind his mask, saying that he did great, and that he'll just be supporting him from now on. All for One begins his assault on All Might. All Might knows that this isn't good. This is not a good matchup. He knows Izuku's quirk. He knows the quirk of the man or the boy that's sitting in front of them. All Might, every time he tries to make a move to destroy and hit All for One, he stopped midair. Crunched, his bones feel like they're aching, and every piece of his body feels like it's draining him. And well, this isn't good. Izuku is losing his mind. Well, luckily someone then shows up. Stain drops down next to Izuku and begins questioning why he would do something like this. You know, kid, I did expect more from you. You knew more. You're smarter than me, better than me. Why are you doing this? Izuku looks at Stain and says that he has no idea who he is and what he's talking about. I'm your master, kid. Sensei. How do you forget that? The one that took you off the streets when you had nothing was me. And you don't remember? Izuku's head begins to hurt, but it's not working. Stain realizes that Izuku must have done something. A failsafe. The kid wouldn't go in blind. He never does. So he begins thinking, what would be the failsafe? What would get him to snap out of it? And Stain remembers a conversation they had. A conversation that even he didn't know they would end up having. And that was about Izuku being merciful. You know, kid, I was serious when I said that maybe I can take some tips from you. You know the difference between mercy and killing. Saving and being a hero. Villain and hero. You know the difference. Izuku's eyes begin to flicker, and his hand begins to drop. Yeah, and sometimes the student becomes the teacher. Izuku's eyes grow wide and his arms begin to reach out once again. He reaches toward All For One as if he's crushing him. Izuku begins to close his hand and All For One's veins begin to pop. All Might sees this and sees it as an opportunity. He punches All For One and he punches him so hard that all his blood vessels burst in his eyes and he's knocked out cold. Of course, bursting blood vessels in your eyes, you wouldn't die, but he's out cold and out for the count. Stain looks at Izuku and grabs him and tries to leave, but Heroes cut him off. Stain realizes the predicament they're in, that he is in a bad spot. He put himself in a bad spot. He put Izuku in a bad spot. So, he decides that he wants to fight out of it. He doesn't care. As long as Izuku gets out of here, that's all he cares about. But Izuku raises his hand once again, and all the heroes begin to freeze. You might want to move fast, Stain, because my body is breaking. Stain smirks and dashes out of there with Toga and Izuku as soon as possible, but there were multiple heroes there that weren't affected. Aizawa, All Might. Aizawa actually smirks, and the rest of the heroes say why they didn't do anything if they weren't affected, and they say they were affected. And Aizawa just continues to say that he was affected by his quirk, even though he knows that the distance of it didn't make sense, and that Izuku knew that he had to pick and choose the heroes he froze, and he gambled right. Aizawa, All Might, they wouldn't have went after him, and a lot of other heroes that he didn't unfreeze respected Izuku, at least respected what he was doing as a quote-unquote vigilante of sorts. But now, he's of a hot topic. They know that he's the masked man. They know he's the one that's been exterminating heroes. Of course, it wasn't him. But Izuku's now most likely one of the most wanted criminals on planet Earth, but mostly in Japan. Izuku, the boy that was taken off the streets, is now wanted for murder of countless heroes that will not see redemption. Izuku Midoriya, the one that trails blood behind him when he fights, is wanted at the top of the list next to another villain that we'll be seeing very soon. Overhaul. Finally, Izuku, Toga, and Stain are reunited. Izuku, after all that mind control and long, hiatus from his normal things, he realizes how big of a threat he is, according to the heroes. Many see him as more of a vigilante than anything, but there are many out there that, seek him as a true villain. And one that he assumed would seek him out does so eventually. So he tells Stain and Toga that he'll be heading off once again, and he'll make sure not to get captured this time. He smiles, and Toga and Stain say that that's not a good idea, that they should be working together. But Izuku says that this will frankly be the last mission he wants to do. Then he'll be back for good. Izuku smiles and then leaves before they can say another word. But for some reason, they feel uneasy about this. They feel like Izuku is lying of some way. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Izuku's never been a clear-cut person. But we'll be seeing that very soon. This eventually leads to Izuku meeting up with someone by the name of Overhaul. By, the leader of the gang of the Shiaha Zaikai. Overhaul is a serious criminal, one that heroes have been searching for a while, and Izuku wants to join him. More like Overhaul wants Izuku to join him. Why? I'm not so sure, but even Izuku doesn't know why either. But he wouldn't just give up this chance on, well, getting into the gang that Overhaul sees so righteous. The gang that he knows will give him enough power to put him away. Izuku began working for Overhaul, and some time passes, and Izuku finally knows where Overhaul is specifically, and where he's always going to be. He started getting trusted, very much so, by Overhaul and everyone else. Toga and Stain, they're not necessarily worried, but they're curious at what Izuku has in mind. He hasn't came back for a long time, and well, it doesn't seem like he is going to come back. Izuku waits and waits on as he slowly but surely gets more trust from Overhaul, eventually meeting, well, Eri, the person that they use to make these quirk erasing bullets. Izuku even knows that this is horrible. This is just horrendous. Why would someone do this? But he knows that Overhaul is far from a good person, far from a person that should be praised. So Izuku begins basically granting the heroes subtle hints, and eventually appears in UA. He approaches UA and alarms begin to blare, and everyone surrounds him. He puts his hands up and smiles. I'm not here to fight, but if a fight is what you want, a fight is what you'll get. I'm here to drop off information. Some of them refuse to budge an inch, but others say that they should hear him out, and Aizawa approaches him and puts out his hand. What do you want, kid? Pretty simple. I have information on the Shiha Zaikai, aka Overhaul. Actually, I have his location. So if you would like that, I can provide it. Izuku slaps his hand onto Aizawa, giving him a piece of paper. But I'll be leaving. Actually soon. But don't worry about me. I'll see you all very, very soon. Izuku heads off, and they're curious about how he knows of the location of Overhaul and how could they actually trust him. But Aizawa says that he wouldn't just come to UA for no reason. He wouldn't just show up out of nowhere. And a lot of people agree. Why would he do that? There's no reason for him to do so. So they believe in this location. They take it to Night Eye's agency. With Mirio, Night Eye, and various other people on the case, they find out that this is actually where Overhaul is, eventually leading to the raid on the Shiha Zaikai base. And this goes relatively normal. Well, at least sort of. Izuku is with Eri and Overhaul, and he's been assigned to be the personal bodyguard of Eri herself, and he knows this is currently happening. Overhaul hears this ruckus, and he tells Izuku to get Eri out of there immediately. So he does. He picks her up and runs her out of the building, and then looks at her. Do you really want to be here? She shakes her head and begins to cry, and Izuku just smirks. Yeah, I didn't think so. So, that's exactly where we're going. We're going away. Izuku takes off, and Overhaul doesn't think much of this. He thinks that he's just getting Eri out of there. But what he doesn't know is that he brought Eri straight to a police station, dropping her off, and before the police could even react, he was gone. He's back at the place, and Overhaul is currently fighting Night Eye and Mirio. Izuku walks in and, well, freezes both Night Eye and Mirio. You know, it's pretty simple, you two. You will just, well, die here by the hands of me and Overhaul. Mirio tries to break free, but then sees in Izuku's eyes. He's lying. He's saying this for a reason. He makes it so Night Eye and Mirio are free. And well, Overhaul doesn't realize this. Quickly, Overhaul is stunned by Izuku, and Night Eye and Mirio punch him in the gut and in the face and begin to, well, assault him, more or less, and attack him, eventually leading to his capture. Izuku smiles and says that he made the job easy for the heroes. Shouldn't they be grateful? And Mirio and Night Eye shake their heads and say that he's done some horrible things. I know I have. That's why I'm turning myself in. He puts his hands out and both of them are confused. He could get out if he wanted to. Izuku has all the space in the world to make sure he got out. And even Night Eye knows this. Nobody can really touch Izuku at this point. Not right now. Not without Aizawa and, well, the cooperation of him. But Izuku is just willingly getting himself cuffed. He gets cuffed and Mirio's walking him out. Why are you doing this? It's pretty simple. I don't care. Everything that I wanted to do is already done. As long as the people I care about are safe, it doesn't matter to me. By the way, the little girl that Overhaul had, her name's Eri. She's at the police station currently. I dropped her off there. Mirio looks at him confused. You confuse me, man. Are you really a villain? That's what society thinks. And that's what the police are gonna think when you bring me in. It's okay. You don't have to worry about me. Just make sure she's safe, okay? Izuku smiles and Mirio's even more confused. This kid, he's smiling in the face of imprisonment, incarceration. He's not coming out for a long time. There's very few things that would let him out. So they bring him in and eventually he's cuffed and put in a prison cell. Nothing crazy. Izuku already promised not to touch anybody. He has no, intention of doing anything. He's the one that turned himself in. And the police even question him, asking why he would do that. And Izuku just puts his hands up. Has nothing else for me to do. I already helped the people I wanted to help. I don't need this world anymore. I hope these heroes can find the error of their ways though. And make this world what it should be. The police look at him oddly and they even question themselves. This doesn't feel like they're incarcerating a villain. This feels like he's just a young boy that went through so much and had to figure it out all on his own. No mentorship really. His mentorship was from somebody that also was a murderer. Someone that killed fake heroes. He even helped somebody that, was deemed weird and odd by society. Even the police begin to question this, and their questions are all answered when Nezu and Aizawa walk up into, the prison. They ask to see Izuku, and they're obviously given the chance, and they begin talking to him. Hello, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Interesting. Haven't heard that name in a while. Midoriya. Kinda has an odd ring to it, don't you think? Izuku's just fine. Well, Izuku, do you really want to be in here? You mean in prison? I mean, of course not. But there's nothing else for me to do. And I can't go back to, my mentor. I can't go back to Stain, can't go back to Toga. It doesn't make sense for me. They begin questioning why it wouldn't, and he just explains that, the police will come, and he's done with fighting these heroes. There's really no reason for him to fight them anymore. That's interesting that you say that, Izuku. Kid, are you serious about not wanting to be a hero? Because we could make that happen. It'd be hard, don't get me wrong. A lot of convincing and you'd go through tons of struggle. But we could figure it out. Maybe. Look, Mr. Aizawa. It's honestly an honor that you think of me so highly. But I'm not the person you think I am. I have a lot of blood on my hands. Literally and figuratively. So, I just don't see myself as a hero. Kid, you may not see yourself as one, but I promise my class does. Izuku is confused and he asks what is he talking about. You were in my class once, and they, are pretty fond of you. Even the hotheads and the annoying ones. But most of them are pretty fond of you. What do you say? I'll give you one shot. That's it. And if you mess it up, you'll just be back here, like you want. Izuku slightly smiles. Okay. One shot to be a hero. With a quirk that is made for a villain. Sounds like an interesting chapter of my well, life.
Sounds good to me, kid. Sounds good to me.
Well, I guess it's official. Let's get you into UA right now, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya, the once boy that was pulled off the streets by the hero killer, brought in a blood-crazed maniac and made her, well, quote-unquote normal. Made her feel at home. He didn't want to go back to them. He didn't want to endanger them anymore. He was practically the #1 villain at this point, with the other ones captured. He didn't want them to feel as if they needed to step up their game or do anything out of the ordinary. He wanted them to live life how they saw fit. Izuku, even with all of this going on, he's always thought about another person other than himself. This is just who he was to the core. This idea bends through universes, through the multiverse. Izuku Midoriya, even if he had a blood quirk, he still thought of the people that he cared about most. And maybe this was even a reason why it drove him to become a hero. Maybe from the inside, he would be able to change hero society for the better. But that's not what this story is about. This story is over. Will Izuku Midoriya be that hero that he, everyone else thinks he can be? Maybe. Maybe so. But that's for another story.